From a rocket taking off to a so-called UFO appearing above the clouds, here are some incredible things that have been filmed by passengers on their planes. Let's get started. The passenger behind the video you're about to see now was going somewhere on this plane. He wanted to look out the window a little when he was surprised by a breathtaking landscape. Indeed, a thunderstorm had just broken out while the plane was in the air, creating a magnificent spectacle and embellished even more by the sunset. Just look at it. Fascinated, this passenger immediately took out his phone and managed to film the storm and the lightnings that were streaking the sky. However, although subjugated by the beauty of the landscape, this person must certainly have felt a little worried at the idea that his plane was plunged into this storm, before telling himself that the aircraft was not at risk after all. On the other hand, he will remember this magnificent storm for a long time. This passenger was flying over the city of Paris. While he wanted to film the city from above to keep a souvenir, he was struck by something abnormal. Indeed, a fire had just started in one of the buildings of the French capital. Surprised by the visible fire from the plane and by the plumes of smoke that were flying in the air, this passenger continued to film, while wondering where the fire had started. But his curiosity was later satisfied when he learned that the building that was burning was none other than the Notre Dame de Paris Cathedral. What a shock! This news must have saddened him. Well, we're pretty sure that this person eventually forgot about this sad incident a few days later, but that he must still feel some pain when he sees this video again. In South Africa, a passenger was on board a plane that had just taken off from Pretoria with 19 people on board. The man wanted to make a test flight in this 1954 twin-engine plane that was going to the Netherlands to be exhibited in an aviation theme park. Shortly after the plane took off, the man sitting on the left wing of the plane was suddenly surprised by the flames. One of the engines had just caught fire and the plane was about to crash. Despite the gravity of the situation, this passenger did not hesitate to take out his phone. He then started filming the scene and even managed to capture the moment the plane crashed. Watch. Sure, this man was able to film the crash of his plane from the inside, but he could say goodbye to his phone. Not for long, fortunately, because he eventually found it. But above all, this man must have felt greatly relieved and happy to be still alive after this accident, which unfortunately caused 2 deaths. This passenger had a close call, but he will never forget this terrible moment he lived on board this plane. After having spent a good moment on board this plane which connected Detroit to Fort Lauderdale in the United States, the passenger, who was probably impatient, wanted to get off the plane as soon as possible. Except that the plane took a whole hour to taxi to the terminal after a landing, which must have made her quite nervous. Faced with her growing anxiety, the young woman lit a cigarette and started to smoke inside the plane, as if nothing had happened. The few puffs she took helped her regain her composure. However, she ended up getting into trouble for it. Well, by smoking, this woman angered the other passengers who had to call the flight attendants. They immediately alerted the law enforcement officers who came to get her off the plane. However, it seems that she was not arrested for her gesture, which is however formally prohibited. However, we can say that she made the bus in spite of her following this incident, because the video where she appears escorted by the 2 officers made the tour of the web. One of the passengers of this plane was looking out of his window at Cape Canaveral, Florida, which the plane was flying over. This passenger wanted to keep a video of the Cape seen from above, but he didn't expect to see this. Watch! While filming, this person was surprised to see a rocket take off at that moment. With her phone, the passenger followed the trajectory of the rocket, managing to capture some stunning images. Of course, his eyes must have been dazzled by the sun that was shining on the sky, but we can say that this passenger did not pay any more attention to it afterwards, because he was specially dazzled by the spectacle which he had in front of him. Well, it is not every day that we see a rocket taking off. This person will never forget the magical moment he experienced that day. What luck! Recently, a steward was at work on board an Airbus on a night flight. But while the plane was flying over Georgia, USA, and while this person wanted to film another plane coming in the opposite direction and flying over his attention was suddenly drawn to colored lights in the dark sky, which formed a kind of V. The steward, who was in the cockpit at the time, quickly turned the camera of his phone on these strange lights that lit up the sky in a strange and fascinating way. Look! If he did not manage to identify this curious object, the steward managed at least to make a video which was posted later on social networks and which made the buzz on the web. But when we talk about buzz, we also talk about credibility. And precisely because of this video, the steward had to face a lot of comments from some internet users who doubted the authenticity of his video. But this certainly left indifferent the steward, who had to expect this kind of reactions, especially since neither the air traffic controllers nor the Federal Aviation Administration reported these luminous objects. Anyway, the steward will never forget what he saw that night. In 2016, the passengers of a plane of the Mexican company Aeromexico were quietly traveling between the cities of Torreon and Mexico City. Of course, they wanted to arrive at their destination and land safely after a flight that was going well. But what a surprise when they saw a snake appear out of nowhere! The reptile had just appeared between the overhead baggage compartments and the wall of the plane before hanging down, ready to fall to the ground. Look at this unusual scene. With the appearance of the green-skinned intruder, the passengers of the Mexican plane had no choice but to remove it from there. Thanks to some blankets brought by a flight attendant, they managed to trap and cover it. It took a lot of effort, but also a lot of courage to face this reptile that was about 1 meter long. However, the passengers were able to keep their composure, and to their great relief, the plane was able to land 10 minutes later in Mexico City, after receiving a priority landing, before the animal control officers boarded the plane to chase away the unwanted passenger. Phew! All's well that ends well. This is a flight that will remain forever in the memory of these passengers. A few years ago, James Wilson, a young Texan at the time, was on board an American Airlines plane that was about to fly from San Francisco to Dallas. The man was hoping for a good trip and a safe arrival home. But not everything goes as planned. During the flight, James was unpleasantly surprised to find that the plane he was on was in bad shape. Slamming noises reached his ears, the walls of the cabin came off in front of his eyes. The pressure had changed, probably because of the air duct. And to top it all off, the plane was shaking very violently, which caused a general panic on board. James, but also the other passengers, then asked the crew members to come and see what was going on, hoping to solve the problem. Fortunately, the captain intervened and decided to turn the plane around and make an emergency landing after seeing the condition of the plane himself. However, the more hopeful James and the other passengers were of a safe return to San Francisco, the more fearful they became of losing their lives at any minute. Despite this, the young Texan tried to remain calm throughout the flight, before breathing a sigh of relief when the plane finally landed safely in San Francisco. James Wilson, like the other passengers and crew members, was relieved to have his life saved, but it is fair to say that this experience, which he remembers very badly, prevented him from boarding a plane again for a long time. A young woman named Marisa Rundle was traveling with her 8-month-old baby on a plane from Syracuse to New York. However, traveling with a baby is not always an easy thing to do, and Marisa hoped hers would stay calm. But that wasn't the case, and to make matters worse, the young mother found herself sitting next to another passenger who couldn't stand to be near her child. Not only that, but the lady started to say rude things, hurting the young mother. As if that wasn't bad enough, the passenger even threatened the flight attendant, who ran over after the incident, that she would be fired from her job, claiming that she worked for the New York government. Marisa found nothing else to do but film the scene that ended with the passenger being thrown off the plane, so that she could later show her family what had happened on board the plane. This way, she managed to show the scene not only to her relatives, but also to the internet users who viewed the video about 2 million times. Result: the government, which got wind of the story, decided to suspend its employee. This finally hurt the young mother, who did not want things to come to this because, as she said, it was all due to a simple misunderstanding. Today, Marisa has certainly already forgotten this story, hoping that the other passenger could find another job. However, this young mother may not have dared to film anything since this incident for fear of causing trouble again. And we end with this video that was taken by a passenger in 2018. The latter was on board a plane in Japan, while he was hoping to enjoy a little bit of the cloudy landscape that was in front of him. He was surprised to see this. Look, what in the world is that? It looks like a UFO, doesn't it? In any case, that's what this passenger must have thought and took his phone to capture this fascinating and terrifying moment. After a few good seconds, he managed to capture images that later made the buzz on the web. But the more he reviewed his video, the more puzzled and curious he became. At least, he wasn't the only one who found the thing strange. That was some consolation. What if it really was a UFO? No one could answer that, unfortunately. Anyway, seeing that thing in the sky fixed high above the clouds marked this person forever. You've just watched some incredible things that have happened inside and outside of airplanes. Which video has amused, impressed, or shocked you the most? Tell me, have you ever filmed something on board an aircraft? Which one? Leave us your answers and impressions in the comments. And as always, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video.